All right, it's another day. It's a little bit colder. Still a beautiful day outside. Got plenty of light coming in from the garage door. So as I'm going to tackle this next project, it's going to be their shelves. And earlier I said we're going to do them on the back. We're going to do them on both sides, and I'm going to do that. But it was a good thing. What I'm going to do is start with just the back. I'm going to just do right there first. And the reason I'm going to do that is because as I was measuring before on our wonderful little plan, I discovered that what I had done is I had not compensated in measuring for the width of the shelf that was going to adjoin it. It doesn't even matter. The long story short is I'm going to do one at a time so that I don't have that kind of grief going forward. So I'm going to do that one. It's going to take me a few minutes to get all the crap out of there so I can actually put them up on the wall. But a couple things just to talk about really quick. So one of the things I'm going to mention about the way that we're doing this garage is we're trying to zone it, put things in different zones. For example, on this wall over here, we're going to do garden stuff. So the shelves will accommodate that. On this wall is going to be all of Rebecca's craft stuff, and she'll do her own videos and stuff for that. And on the back wall is going to be all the woodworking stuff and automotive stuff. And then one last area will be above the garage door, and that will be for camping stuff and holiday stuff. We really always keep thinking we're going to get into this decorating big for Halloween stuff. And so maybe if we actually have a place to put it, we'll do that. All right, let's get started. Okay, thing number one is these containers. So we have decided we're going to try to standardize on a specific type of container. And so what we did is we went and got these 20-gallon Craftsman ones. They seem to work out really well for us so far. But what that meant is that I had to do the shelves or the plans to accommodate these. And the way I'm going to do that is to do one on each level. So what we'll do is we'll put them up there, and we're going to be able to put two. We'll put two of them in each bay. So I got to do like 3 or 4 different bays up there. I'll show you on the plans. Well, so what I did is I ran over to Home Depot and I bought the lumber, and the longest strips are going to be 133 inches long, and that's going to be roughly from the corner over to the doorway. Not quite, it's going to be about 4 inches short. But I did have them cut those because I only have a 6-foot bed in my truck. Even then it was hanging out the back, and I felt like a big dork driving down the road with these hanging out the back. Yeah, I did put the flag on. Yeah, I was only doing about 25 miles an hour. I avoided main roads, stayed on the back roads. Somebody approached. I let them pass me. I pulled over. I did have them cut the others, at least giving me the one cut so they would fit in the back of the truck. I will go ahead and cut those. And one other thing to mention, especially when we're talking about these 2x4s, is I've seen a lot of people do this differently, where some, like the one I showed you when we started this, from this kid, he did 2x4s, and maybe it took me a bit to figure out why. It's because he's doing the double layers like I'm going to do. So the 2x4s are going to support that. A lot of other people, what they've done is just cut them in half so they're more like a 2x2 instead of a 2x4. But that's when they're only doing a single layer. And I might do that when it comes to putting them right up there above the garage door. When I do those shelves finally, I might just do those the 2x2s. We'll see how that goes. right, here we are, engineering on the fly. We aren't going to be able to go out all those 33 inches, so unless I was going to take down this frame for the crawl attic space, it's going to go right at 29 inches from the wall to the edge of that. We're going to just make it that wide. Anyway, one thing that's really lucky, it appears, is that there is a stud that's running right in line with that 29 inches, and hopefully we'll be able to catch that as we go across. But the first thing we did is we measured from the wall to that first tape mark, which is where the first joist is going to be. And that's about 35 and a half, 36 inches. The first board, I went ahead and we marked it out at that line. I'm going to do 2 pilot holes right here, and we're going to put in 2 screws first. So I went ahead and I bought just these screws to go in, and they match kind of the ones I did for the bench, but they are the 3.5 inch ones. So anywhere where I'm putting 2 2x4s together, I will use this, or when I'm going actually into the wall. Otherwise, I'll use the ones that I used for the bench, just to go like from the plywood into the braces. We'll get there.
Since I needed a total of 5 of these boards at the 133 inches, I decided to lay them all out and get the spacing for the braces, then drill the pilot holes. I went ahead and cut 4 56.5-inch support boards for the front of the shelving unit. One would attach on each end, and then 2 would be equidistant in the middle. I'll show you. As you can see, I attached that first 133-inch board right along that joist line as I mentioned. Of course, I did need some help holding it in place while I drilled it in. And then I went ahead and attached the support boards on the front of that first board. Okay, so I was wrong. I still needed to remove the frame for the attic access hole. Yeah, you got to do what you got to do. And it also meant I had to cut the one section of the frame in 2 pieces, since that next support board would be right in the middle of the frame. With the supports all in place, I wanted to double check my measurement for the brace pieces. So I put together 2 scrap pieces of 2x4s and then used one of the braces in the middle. I whipped out my trusty little level to make sure everything was plumb and level. And I'm satisfied. Now I needed to cut another 9 26-inch brace boards for a total of 10. With braces and outer pieces all cut to length, I laid them out on the garage floor to build the individual shelf frames. Sorry, my battery must have died or something, so you don't get to see me screwing them all together. To prepare for installing the shelf frames, I measured down from the ceiling along each support board so I could drill pilot holes and start the screws. I'm not really sure if I saw anybody else do this, but I measured down from the back of the wall as well. And the reason I measured the wall was so I could attach a temporary support block at each shelf height. Even with help, I knew that was going to make it a ton easier to hang the shelf frames. And speaking of help, it's always nice to have a willing son nearby. I sat and explained to him how we would put the butt edge of each frame in place on top of that little block, then lift to the mark on the support boards. I only drove 1 screw first into a support board while my trusty assistant held the first frame. That initially allowed me to remeasure the supports to make sure I was putting the shelves in the right spot. Now, there was some minor adjustment, but just a little bit. Then, before putting in additional screws, we would keep pulling out the level, placing it both on the main board and then back on the brace boards, just to make sure we got things as level as possible. As you can see, we also screwed the frame to the back wall at each stud location. That's 2 screws per stud. With the upper shelf frame in place, we just did the same thing, just with the lower frame. So my assistant had other things to do during the day, and since he had helped me already get most of it in place, it was pretty easy for me just to go in and put the remainder of the screws in. The finishing part of this set of shelves was simply putting in that half-inch plywood sheet. Full disclosure, I didn't use my table saw. I had Lowe's cut them. I think by the time this whole shelf project is done, those Lowe's cut guys are going to be sick of me. With each sheet, I drilled pilot holes in the corners, then using the leftover screws from the bench project, I attached each shelf to the frame. And here's a quick look at the first set of shelves before loading it up. Not too shabby.
Okay, we're starting to get there. We got this first shelf in place. So I went over to this side and we had planned to do a double shelf over here. So I measured 9 feet from over here to about there, and I thought, that's exactly what I need. I need a 9-foot shelf. I went ahead and I built the bases and I measured the ceiling, and then I made a startling realization for myself. And that was, this section right here was going to be a problem. And if I had done a 9-foot shelf, those 9-foot shelves would have come right to here, which means, how the crud do you get this crap off? You'd have to slide everything down, and then it would be a big disaster. So I had to shift. I had to pivot. I could have gone ahead and cut the boxes that I already made down to 6 feet, but that would have been a waste of wood, and I really don't have a lot of time and effort to do that anymore. So I decided to shift and pivot once again. And what was that shift and pivot? Let's just put those 9-foot shelves right over here. And since my wife thought, hey, you can't have them that high because I cannot reach them, she wanted to make sure that I got one level down so that she could put the gardening stuff on that level. Regardless, it worked out fine. We do now have all the shelves in place that we do want to put in for this round. I have mentioned before, we're going to do some that will go up above there. And we will put a 6-foot one over there because I really want some shelves that are specifically designated for woodworking tools and automotive. But for now, here we are. I'm really excited to have them. And thanks for hanging around with me for my great shelf adventure. You know, it's one of those things you go through and you watch other people do these kind of things online and it's like, oh, these are great. These are easy. They're so easy to do. And I have to admit, they really weren't terrible to do. But there are some things that you really need to be aware of. Number one, if you're delusional like I am, you go over to Lowe's, you pick up some 2x4s and some other things and you think, great, they're going to be perfectly straight. They're going to not be bowed. They're not going to be warped. Good luck with that. The last round I did get from Lowe's, the seasoned old vet guy who was there in the wood department said, yeah, you're never going to find straight ones. So you really have to be careful what you're doing when you're building these because you're not going to get perfectly straight. You do the best you can and you build it out. The other thing is, who knew? The people who built the house, they didn't build it completely square and straight either. So you put these in the corners and they don't exactly match. Regardless, it worked out for me. It worked out for us. We're excited to keep going on this great big adventure, which is cleaning up this garage. Hang around. If you like watching people stumble through, having to make changes on the fly, that's us. We're going to have to do it as we keep doing this. But so far, so good. We're excited to get this far. Give us a subscribe, give us a like, follow us along. We're just going to keep plugging along until we get our 2 vehicles here in the garage. Thanks for watching.